Hello again and welcome to Pearl Magazine. Hong Kong people love drinking coffee and we have the numbers to show it. In 2017, the city imported over 69,000 tons of coffee beans and related products. But behind every cup, there is also a significant amount of waste. Over 12 tons of coffee grounds are generated every day, and most of them end up in our landfills. Pearl Magazine's Tina Jiang reports that some people are trying to give this byproduct a second life. A new batch of mushrooms is ready to harvest at this farm.
I'm Russell. We upcycle local waste to cultivate this gorgeous mushroom.
4 years ago, Russell started his mushroom cultivation experiment at this farm in the rural area of Tuen Mun. The raw material he uses is coffee grounds.
Currently, I can process up to around 800 kilograms of coffee ground weight per month. I'll take it out and then mix it with other resources that are available for the mushroom to digest. Those are the local wood chips. I will mix it together and compost for a few days.
To most people, coffee grounds and wood chips are considered waste. Over the past 4 years, Russell has been collecting this waste that would otherwise go to the landfills and turns them into the substrate or underlayer on which his mushrooms grow. Traditional mushroom substrate involves a variety of ingredients, such as straw, sawdust, wheat bran, and cereal grains. These are common in agricultural areas, but practically unavailable in a highly urbanized city like Hong Kong.
I look at whether any city waste is possible to be a solution. Then I look into the coffee ground.
Coffee, a drink that is enjoyed by many, produces a large amount of waste. In 2017, Hong Kong imported over 69,000 tons of coffee beans and related products. A local environmental group estimates that every day Hong Kong generates over 12 tons of coffee grounds.
Coffee ground weight is something urban, which is not so traditional. It is one of the available substrate, but it is not the ideal substrate.
Coffee grounds are high in nitrogen, which can potentially help produce higher yields. The richness of the grounds, however, also means a higher chance of contamination.
During summer, with all these contaminations and pest problems, the mushroom I can collect each week may down to 10 kilograms to 30 only. During winter times, in the current setting, I can collect around 70 kilograms per week.
The coffee substrate has to be sterilized before growing the mushrooms.
After packing it into a bag, then I will sterilize it to ensure there is no other bugs or any bacteria that can affect the growth of mushroom. Then I will take this sterilized bag into a clean room to inoculate with the species I selected.
Russell says Hong Kong people are more familiar with imported mushrooms, such as button mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms. The species he's growing are all oyster mushrooms, which are less popular, but it is a perfect match for the coffee grounds-based substrate.
They can digest a wide range of material to be their nutrients. Other kinds of mushroom, normally they would be more selective on the material they grow on.
His fresh mushrooms are selling at $20 to $30 per 100 grams, which is double or even triple the market price. Those he doesn't sell, he dries.
The dehydrated mushroom would have a distinct flavor compared to the fresh one. And during the process, I would dry it by sunlight to half dry it, and then I will put it into an air dryer to make it completely dry for a long-term storage. and that made the mushroom more nutritious. The flavor would be stronger too.
Nothing gets wasted on his farm. Mushrooms that are less than perfect, the not-so-good-looking ones, are ground into powder. Russell used to work in IT as a programmer. At the age of 30, he decided to enroll in a master's program in the UK to study sustainable agriculture.
Before I come back to Hong Kong, the word mushroom was not in my head. No knowledge were given by the program about mushroom cultivation. Just a lot of ideologies or things related to sustainable agriculture have been implanted into my head.
Then came one unexpected opportunity in his family's old village house. It has a large backyard, so he used it to experiment and continue his research in precision agriculture.
It is an old pig-yard that's abandoned for a few years already. It's not so suitable for traditional agricultural things like vegetable growing because the light requirement cannot be fulfilled. So I start to think about whether I could grow mushroom.
When he first started, he had to frequently visit different coffee shops in the city to collect coffee grounds himself.
Most of the time, it's not centralized. It's certain places for you to collect. Every coffee shop may only available by few kilograms.
The workload was heavy, especially for a one-man project. Luckily, he found a supplier who was willing to offer a helping hand.
今日多唔多咖啡渣啊？今日算唔係好多。
Jay and his team started a social enterprise in 2014. They've been recycling local coffee grounds and upcycling them for several years.
After we know that he wants to use the urban waste to make the mushroom, and then we think it's a good idea, and it can really can help the society and can promote the green idea. So we support it fully. We will collect the coffee grounds and deliver it to him weekly or bi-weekly. Or he can help the local farmer. Otherwise, it will go to landfill.
In their Zero Ground Coffee campaign, coffee grounds are turned into soap, flower pots, and other products. Some of the recycled coffee grounds will be fermented into compost and later donated to the local farmers. They also offer upcycling workshops to companies.
The coffee grounds mainly come from three sources. The first is a hotel, second is the office, third is the restaurant and cafe.
Now, Jay and his team collect around 1 to 2 tons of coffee grounds per week. Over the past 6 years, they have recycled nearly 98 tons.
In Hong Kong, a lot of the urban waste can be upcycled. If we think more and we understand more, we will have more idea and more way to upcycle it.
Hugo is a project officer working at a local environmental education center.
咁啊可以打開俾大家望一望先嘅。係啦，平時有冇見過咖啡渣啊？我哋今日呢個 workshop 咧，其實
Today's workshop is about tie-dyeing with coffee grounds, but in fact, the topic is food waste.
係講廚餘嘅。
In 2019, there were some 11,000 tons of municipal solid waste disposed into our landfills each day. Of this, about 30% was food waste, constituting the largest category of waste.
即係香港人咧，我覺得好中意飲咖啡。
Hong Kong people love drinking coffee, and we generate a lot of coffee grounds. Therefore, it's a good example to show our food waste problem.
帶出廚餘嗰個處理嗰個問題。
The coffee grounds are collected from a nearby cafe. Hugo and the participants will use them to dye handkerchiefs. The participants are taught how to use rubber bands to prevent the dye from reaching certain areas of the fabric. That way, they can create different patterns. The grounds are boiled for at least 20 minutes to extract the pigment.
咖啡渣嘅顏色咧，就同佢喺食。
The color of the coffee grounds is related to the coffee beans.
咖啡豆咧，其實佢新鮮摘咗落嚟啦。
After picking, they go through roasting, so they got burnt a little.
嘅方法令到佢有少少變窿嘅。
And the color is darker too. Actually, the color we'll get is related to the degree of roasting.
tie-dyeing is a technique that often uses bright colors and bold patterns. However, the coffee grounds can only provide a light brown color. Hugo hopes the participants can appreciate the color they get in the end.
Coffee grounds are not a traditional dye. We could have used many other dyes. But as we would like to focus on the food waste problem, it would be better if we choose some related ingredients. Other food waste such as orange peels or vegetables like beetroot can also work. We've been holding this workshop at the center for 7 years. What we really want people to learn is not the technique of tie-dyeing, but the awareness of environmental protection. We want them to learn it through reusing food waste in a creative way. That's why for the past 7 years, we've been trying to keep the procedures simple.
The participants have also learned a lot.
I've never heard that coffee grounds can be reused. I think the idea is creative. Normally, it would be tossed out right after its use. But now, I know that it can be used as a dye, at least.
I have many friends who drink coffee, but I believe many of them don't know tie-dyeing with the coffee grounds. I recommend to them to try this.
After the break, finding value in discarded materials isn't as difficult as it sounds. But is recycling enough, or do we need to do more? Find out when we come back. Welcome back to Pearl Magazine. Having a healthy recycling industry is a modern solution to handling discarded materials. But is it really the answer to all our rubbish problems? How about not creating waste to start with? Tina Zhang continues her look at the issue of waste processing in Hong Kong.
I'm Perry. I'm an artist and I work for the wood sculpture for over 13 years.
Perry spends a lot of time at this studio. All of his pieces are made from recycled wood.
My major study is the environmental arts. When we work like a kind of wood sculpture or some of an art project, to be honest, we cannot change a lot. Maybe we can save or we can try to pick it up a certain lots of tree. But you know, one day they have talking about nearly 40 tons of trees. They need to take it out.
Since 2018, Perry has taken up an additional role running a recycling business. At this factory in rural Fanling, he started Hong Kong's first integrated tree recycling and processing center, hoping to save some from the landfill.
I believe that actually in the world, no waste. Just have one issue is no appropriate distribution. In natural world, and our tree or the yard waste that will be compost or the transformed by the other insect or animal to be other resource. But we leave it in the urban or we call city, and then we need another artificial recycle system.
Each month, Perry collects 8 to 10 tons of wood waste. They often come from construction sites or fallen trees and branches from trimming.
From the numbers that we gather, we can roughly estimate the amount of wood waste we got is on the order of hundreds of tons per day.
Dr. Lam's research focuses on the enhancement of waste's value, or valorization. He finds it's extremely rewarding to be able to turn something that nobody wants into something that people may buy.
For this construction and demolition wood waste, this actually, most of the time is actually being sent to landfill directly. But for the wood that we gather from roadside work, trimming and other things, if it is nice big piece and is free of disease, usually they can be made into other higher value products.
For 3 years, Perry has been working towards this goal. He upcycles wood waste into furniture and art pieces so they can be sold on to consumers.
Like that, we don't set a very high price, around $200 to $400. Chair on the bench, most of the time, some of them will be lower, like 1,500 or 1,000 around. But something like table will be higher price, like several thousand.
But the biggest challenge Perry has is to make his products affordable to the average consumer.
Most of them, I can say 80 to 90%, they cannot afford that kind of price. So at the end, then that becomes a waste.
Recycling materials are always more expensive than virgin materials. Hong Kong people have a relatively higher awareness of recycling. People, unfortunately, select the economical side.
For the past decade, Professor Wilson Liu has been researching construction waste management.
In 2019, we generate around 11,000 tons of construction waste every day from all the sites in Hong Kong. Among it, around 3.4%, or say 380 tons, is the wood waste. That's a huge amount. To be fair, the EPD and different trades and different associations are making efforts to try to recycle the wood waste. But I must say the amount is very minimal. It's just like a peanut.
Professor Liu says by sending their waste to landfills or other places like mainland China, Hong Kong people have had it easy for a long time. Something had to be done.
Now, mainland China, they heightened the border control to import waste. So we have to develop our own recycling capacity. But looking around, unfortunately, we virtually have a very small or actually no recycling industry. If there's still a gap between the cost and the benefits, I hope the government can chip in.
With some form of subsidy, Wilson Liu says the recycling industry can create a sustainable business, adding to the economy. But the simple disposal of waste will cost taxpayers money. The Environmental Protection Department says the cost to collect, transfer, and dispose of waste is $830 per ton. And soon the government will start collecting a volume-based waste collection fee where households are expected to pay an average of $31 to $55 per month.
There's a lot being spoken nowadays of a thing called the circular economy, where we basically try and reuse items and then recover them properly and then bring them back into that. Now,
Nigel Matravers works for a German company that manages a project he thinks is a great example of the circular economy in action.
We essentially manage what's called a regulated electrical and electronic equipment, which is regulated under the legislation. So that is principally refrigerators, air conditioners, washing machines, TVs, computers, monitors, printers, and scanners.
The company provides technologies to process e-waste into secondary raw materials. It also controls the management of hazardous materials that are contained in some equipment. The company has been a Hong Kong government contractor since 2015.
We work closely with the retailers so that when you buy a new item, they send us a message, and then within 3 days of the purchase, we actually come and collect your used electrical items from your door. Record it, bring it to this facility, and then we dismantle it with a great deal of care.
Located at Wee Park in Tuen Mun, the facility is now processing around 500 refrigerators and 1,000 washing machines every day.
We recover, say, the difficult materials, say the refrigerant gases, which are got a very high global warming potential. So those gases are either destroyed or they're actually sent for remanufacture.
The company also recover aluminum, steel, and plastic from various appliances. Nigel says they're achieving a recycling rate of better than 70% at the moment. Despite that rate, one expert says there is limited business potential.
The problem in Hong Kong is that we have very little manufacturing industry. That means there's little demand for this locally.
Benjamin Stewart has been doing research on the circular economy for over 10 years.
I know that We Park has wonderful capacities. According to what I see, they can absorb maybe a third of e-waste that is currently generated.
He's worried that some items are not included in the scheme.
What about the smaller elements? Think about a kitchen tool, a cable, for example, that is not covered. It's also e-waste, though.
The EPD says in 2019, Hong Kong generated around 69,000 tons of e-waste. Before 2018, most of that was exported to developing economies. Now, after the government fully implemented the Producer Responsibility Scheme on e-waste, the EPD says Hong Kong should have enough treatment capacity to handle all of its e-waste locally. According to the Basel Convention, we are not allowed to export e-waste, but some still get sent overseas.
The fact that they are still as a functional device that makes it, sell as a used good, and so it is very likely they are being shipped to other places as refurbished items. And it's actually happening not just Hong Kong, but a lot of developed places.
So you have a person in Europe who goes to a company, buys away the e-waste and says, I will take care of that. This person then sells it to another person in another country, in Africa or China, for example, makes a profit out of it. In Hong Kong, you have companies who abuse certain loopholes, for example, waste batteries from vehicles, from automobiles, and they would then illegally export them for treatment to Southeast Asia, notably lower income countries.
Lam says Hong Kong has to learn to deal with its own junk.
If we just let our e-waste being transported to other developing countries, more than likely they will be processed with a substandard practice. And one of the infamous examples would be open burning, which means they would just burn the e-waste, and that would generate a lot of toxin, carcinogenic compounds that are very long-lasting and very accumulative in our bodies, and metal components will also leach in the soil. A contaminated soil or water supply is going to cause them a lot of downstream problems.
Above all, the best solution to the problem is to prevent e-waste from being created in the first place.
Such products should be designed in a way that they can be repaired. If we have recycling as an option, which is the second least ideal one, then firstly, to get back those valuable resources, materials in devices that we want to use again, right? The second element is to do this in a way that you do not cause secondary pollution.
That's our show for this week. Next week on Pearl Magazine, Hong Kong scientists are on the verge of a medical breakthrough when it comes to early identification and curing of dementia. See you then. Good night.